Hi. I just wanted to quickly introduce to you this next video, this next interview with relationship coach Shelley Whitehead. A phenomenal interview, and you really don't want to miss this one. So we talk about dating and how you go about getting the right partner, bereavement, breaking up. Um, what else do we cover? She has the four C's of a successful relationship. So much content, so much value in it. I will shut up now and let you get involved and watch the video. Please do like and share if you think this will be a benefit to anyone else. It's all about getting the message out there and just getting out some good quality content. Enjoy. Anyway, morning, Shelley. How are you?
I'm great, Kev. I'm really, really good. Thank you. How are you
Good,
doing?
good. Very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and taking some time to chat with us. So basically, for you guys that don't know, Shelley is a relationship coach, specializing in dating and bereavement. And I would say within bereavement, there's also breakups. Would that be right? Would that be a fair thing to say?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bereaved, dumped, divorced.
Okay. Great. So, could you tell me a bit about sort of your journey and how you came about sort of doing this?
Well, I was involved in advertising before this. So I've always loved working with people. I really relate to people. I build great rapport with people. And when I left South Africa in the beginning of 2006 and moved to London, I was looking at reinventing my life. And one of my closest girlfriends is a clinical psychologist and had been talking about NLP. So I was kind of Googling this NLP, and it was obviously linked to a coaching website. And I was intrigued. So I sent off for the info pack, and it was brilliant. Then I spoke to one of the master coaches, and I was sold. That was it. This huge box of material arrived at my door, and I started studying. I worked with a master coach, and I became a qualified life coach. I then added a whole bunch of other tools, and I haven't stopped since then, because every year I update my skills, I update my tools. And I was at that time in a new marriage because I had lost my first husband to cancer. In 2004 and married again in 2006. And it felt like a dream come true because I'd married a best friend of 30 years. And into the marriage, things started to become more and more difficult. And I found as a coach, I was really fascinated with all aspects of relationships. And I was working with people who were wanting to change their life to have better relationships, and I found myself in a very traumatic relationship. And so began my journey into the world of relationships. That marriage ended, which was a huge turmoil for me over 4.5 years ago. And I turned into one of my clients. But I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by therapists and coaches and people in the personal development world. And I accessed and used all the tools I use to help my clients out of trauma to transition that grief, which is like a bereavement, because when you lose a partner or are in a bereaved state, the ending of a relationship is it's the same thing. Because I see the same signs with my clients who've lost partners and experienced loss in other areas of their life, and the clients whose relationships have ended going through that same process. And there are formulas and there are tools for not getting stuck. And that really is what it's about. It's about not getting stuck and feeling like a victim and that my life is over and I'll never be happy again. And that's what I do best. I help people transition the endings to create new beginnings, to find themselves as in who am I now that I'm single or without this person. Sometimes it's even a little creature, as in a four-legged creature, an animal that they've been so attached to because it was such a beautiful relationship. Who am I without that? and how can I be happy again?
Sure.
Mm.
Fascinating. I mean, what was what were some of the key learnings from your own experience going through this? It's quite interesting because with coaches and therapists that you speak to, is somehow we manage to attract the similar sort of audience that we are, that we're most passionate about, and it normally comes from a sort of a turning point or something within ourselves as well. I'm beginning to notice that the more people I interview. But what was the sort of key learnings for you out of that turmoil?
The biggest key learning is that you can't bypass grief. You've got to go through it. And in my experience of coaching hundreds and hundreds of people through this, and my reach is far because I work all over the world in different continents. As long as people can speak English, I can work with them. I have some very rusty German, and my Afrikaans, which is a South African language, is pretty good, but I prefer to work in English. So in coaching clients, I have noticed that people do try to sedate, medicate their grief by using alcohol, drugs, prescription medication, sex to bypass the grief, and also very quickly jumping into new relationships. And I remember a mentor of mine, a woman called Shah Wasman, saying to me soon after my marriage ended, "You're not allowed to start dating again," she said. And so it was an interesting process of knowing that I couldn't actually bypass it. I had to go through it. But I used the tools I had at my disposal and the experts I'm connected to really get through the terrible pain, the obsessing that the mind goes through. And very soon I started to put these pieces of my life back together again, till eventually I came to this foundation of forgiveness for myself, because we go into, if only I had done this, if only I hadn't done that, into, oh, I'm really grateful I'm no longer experiencing this. And I am overwhelmed by all the love and the support that surrounds me. And actually, I'm laughing and I'm having fun again. And I have a new sense of focus and a new direction. And then began that new process of dating, which is something I teach and I do well, of how to find the right relationship. I love being in a relationship. I love having a partner. But there's a way to go about dating to find the right partner. And that's where I started again. And I've had that opportunity, fortunately, twice in my life, from being bereaved to dating again, to getting married. And I'm probably going to divert a little here. So it would take us into another area. When it comes to dating, the one thing I didn't do, because I hadn't learned it yet, so obviously I teach what I've learned, was in dating, it's like buying a company. A relationship is an investment. And I think when I chatted to you, I said I wanted to speak to you about the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our relationships.
Yes.
So let me just get back to that dating process, which is an investment of time and energy, and sometimes a financial investment as well, because dating does cost money. And so I'm talking to men and to women here.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
And if you're buying a company, you do something that's called due diligence. So the men especially will be familiar with this terminology. And you want to do your due diligence, especially in that first year. So when you find somebody who ticks your boxes, because that's one of the requirements, and I don't talk about a whole long list of requirements. This very much is in tune with your own values. So when you find someone who ticks those boxes. You take your time. You date them for a year. Because the part that we commit to, you said earlier that we would be talking about the 4 C's, so I'll go into that next.
Okay. Cool.
This is the 5th C. The 5th C is commitment. The part we commit to with any partner is the shadow side. That is that side that is difficult. The side we kind of go, wow, I never expected you to behave this way. I didn't know you would behave like that. Or, I don't like this part of you. That's the part we really commit to, because we've got to be able to live with our partner's worst side. And Kevin, we all have it. You know, I have. I'm going to take a sip of water here because I've got a bit of a tickle in my throat.
Sure.
I have a shadow side. Everybody I know has a shadow side. Even my little dog has a shadow side. Yeah. And due diligence is absolutely vital, because if we can commit to the shadow side, we're going to have a good relationship, because we really know what we're getting into.
Sure. I really like that, actually, because it's a funny thing. We don't really, especially in the early stages, it's all sweetness and light, and you have that chemistry going on, and it is literally sort of biology going off within you, the excitement, etc., etc. But yeah, the commitment to the shadow side is an interesting way of looking at it, because for some, when you see that shadow side, it can be overwhelming, you know. The other thing is, the thing that sprung to mind is that when that shadow side comes out, it can ignite the shadow side within ourselves as well, and which is why you have those. I've been in some relationships that have been quite turbulent, and it's kind of you kind of clash. There's just a massive ball of unconsciousness going on. You know, you're fighting fire with fire type of thing. And how do you navigate? I'm maybe digressing a little, but how do you kind of you navigate that type of scenario?
I'm so glad you've mentioned that, because when we are triggered in a relationship, you know, you can go from, here you are in this restaurant, it's daytime, you're sitting outside, you're on a holiday, and you're having a lovely morning cup of coffee, looking at the tourists and the view, and he says something, and she feels something, and before she knows it, the stuff is sprouted forth, and they are all of a sudden in this, you what? But you never, and they've both been triggered. So there's a whole release of cortisol. It's a chemical in the bloodstream, or hormone in the bloodstream. And for 20 minutes after that has happened, this is the physiological reaction, for 20 minutes after it's happened, we've left our rational brain, we're then in our limbic brain, it's our fight and flight brain, and neither of us is rational, even though we may appear to be rational. And it takes 20 minutes for that cortisol to dissipate, to become more rational. This is a couple, if they are conscious, they will realize that it's not about the pain and blame, that if you hadn't said that, I wouldn't react this way, and if you did this differently, I wouldn't feel that way. That is what I would call the unconscious relationship. Because if we're sitting there and you say something to me and I'm more conscious and I'll notice I've been triggered, I'll just kind of go into, oh, what am I feeling? I feel blamed. Oh, that makes me feel really angry. Okay, is this true? And then what I would say to you would be, oh, I'm feeling a little triggered here. Something's happening for me. And it's not about blaming you, because then you would notice that I'm taking responsibility for what's happening inside me in relation to us. And if you're really curious and you are conscious and you care about what's happening, you'll say, oh, I wonder what the trigger was. And then you would kind of investigate that. As long as the cortisol wasn't high, because the minute we keep paining and blaming one another, we keep that process going. And look, all couples argue, all couples will have a fight. It's okay. But we want to feel safe in our relationship. We want to work consciously because most of the time it's a 90-10 principle. 10% of what you've said that has triggered me will influence the situation between us. It's about that. 90% of this stuff is from the past. So if I look at that, I'm very sensitive to being blamed. It's like a big trigger for me. If I'm hungry and if I'm tired, oops, we're going to have, this shadow side coming out. I'm not in my most rational state then. So that's, I need to take care of that so that I can kind of appear and present myself as conscious and be in a good state. But just assume that my blood sugar's low and I haven't had enough sleep and suddenly I feel blamed. I become reactive. I then set you off and we're both in an unhealthy state. If I'm conscious, I'm going to realize that that blame stuff comes from my childhood, way back there in the past. And actually, when I was blamed, I didn't feel good enough. This is the underlying stuff that plays out. And it would attach to a belief system that I had as a little person. And I use the story of, my belief system that was very unconscious that I remembered when I was helping facilitate a workshop. And I remembered what happened to that little 4.5-year-old. And it goes right back to blame. So I won't go into that story now, but I am sensitive to blame because my little 4.5-year-old Shelley was very, very afraid of abandonment and rejection. So underlying the blame, as we peel that layer away, is that fear of, I'm not good enough, and if I'm not good enough, you're going to leave me. And that trigger, if you're conscious, you can catch it quickly and say, oh, I know what's going on here. And when you're with your partner, who also understands what your greatest wound based on that belief system is, will be sensitive to help heal it. Because it's in relationship, in those early childhood years, that there is a woundedness. And Kevin, you can have 3 children in one family who perceive things very differently. They all have, what do you mean? You're wounded there. I don't say our childhood was X, Y, and Z, but I experienced that. And to the other child, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So childhood wounds are different from different perceptions, different needs that were responded to or not. And it's only in relationship for the very deep stuff. But if we don't work consciously, if we're working unconsciously, we will constantly be blaming our partner for not meeting our needs. And here's one of the big rules. There is no partner who will ever meet all of your needs. If you're looking for that, you're going to be very disappointed and you're going to be in trouble. The conscious relationship says, there's something happening inside me. The partner will say, what's happening? Because only one partner can have their needs met at any given time. So if you're both in need, only one of you can address that. The other one needs to hold the space. And it's about working, as I say, consciously. So I've probably used that word consciously about 20 times now.
I know, but it is about having that consciousness, isn't it? And it's funny, you just touched on something there that I wanted to elaborate on a bit, is that only one partner can have their needs met at any one time. The other one has to hold the space. Yes. Now, again, I think that's probably where a lot of clashes are coming, where one partner is insisting that their needs to be met and the other one wants their needs to be met at the same time. And there's no real communication or understanding of that principle.
I have done couples training with some amazing therapists. So my 2 mentors here in the UK are women called Sue Wynn James and Noah Rockman. And then my guru of teaching in relationships is a woman called Heidi Schleifer. And I will encourage everybody watching the interview to go onto YouTube or onto TEDx. So she has a TED talk called The Bridge of Connection. Heidi, Hedy, and then Schleifer, Schleifer. And it's a methodology we teach couples of how to get into connection, because what is going on in the behavior is the same for all couples everywhere in the world. And most of the time, conventional couples therapy does not work because it's about the focus. Conventional couples therapy will focus on the issues. He does this and I feel that, and she does that, and if she stopped doing that, we would have a better relationship, and we are focusing on the issue that happened last week, last year, and there are things that definitely need addressing. But when we start to focus on building connection versus the issues, it's the content of stuff, it can rip couples and make them feel even more apart. When we begin to focus on building connection and very, very deep understanding, where the limbic brains start to resonate because of the methodology, everything starts to change. It's like magic. It literally is like waving a magic wand. I remember some years ago sitting with a couple who'd been really out of connection and struggling with their relationship. And I'd made tea beforehand, and then we sat down for the session using the methods we use with our couples. And at one point, he turned, he said, "Why did you put in tea?" Because it was such a beautiful connection that he hadn't felt in so many years. And that is the big difference in building connection versus working on infidelity. If there's something that can be tweaked, I'm very big on the masculine feminine dynamics in relationships. So I'd like to add some value here. So if anybody is part of a couple and struggling with a relationship, may I recommend a book? It's called Why Women Talk and Men Walk by Stosny and Love. A really brilliant relationship book. I recently recommended to one of my male clients who came to see me. Someone I'd coached 4 years ago, and he saw me doing a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago and made an appointment to see me. And I could see what was happening for him. And there was a lot of neediness going on in his relationship. So here's something about neediness. When we are needy, it's because we have given up our power to something or to someone. Neediness will attract one thing: rejection. Unless, of course, you're working with a partner who's very conscious. But we all know needy types. Needy can become victim very quickly. And even in daily life, we feel and sense people who are very needy of money, needy of the job, needy of whatever it is. Even sometimes my little dog is very needy for attention. And it can be very irritating because we're very focused on something. Here's somebody needing something from us. And that's when I really stop and just give her an extra cuddle, and then she just settles down. But neediness attracts rejection. And I said to him, I really recommend that you read this book, because how you're showing up in your relationship as the masculine will unsettle your feminine partner, because she needs to be able to trust you. And for a woman to trust a man, he needs to be the strong masculine. Now, not everybody can be strong all the time, but there's certain things that we do in our behavior that upset the masculine-feminine dynamic, like the woman who questions her partner. who doesn't seem to trust him with little things. That's from his perception. But the things that she does, it makes him feel shamed or blamed. And when a man doesn't feel that his woman trusts him, he will withdraw emotionally. Oops. And then sets in a whole cycle of disconnection. Because a woman's greatest fear generally is of disconnection, and a man's greatest fear is of being shamed and blamed. And when these two dynamics are playing out, we get a disconnected relationship. So that's why I'm recommending that book, Why Women Talk and Men Walk. It's something I use in my practice all the time.
Great. That's great. Thanks a lot. That's amazing. Going back to the remaining C's then. So the fifth was commitment.
Yeah, that's the one I seldom mention. So that kind of came up. But let's get to the first four.
Sure.
And what's interesting here, we can use these 4 C's in our relationships, and they're also in the big wide world, in the working environment, they're necessary. So let's start with chemistry. You need chemistry in a relationship. Otherwise, you're with your brother or your sister. And we need a masculine and feminine dynamic for that chemistry to ignite. Even in gay relationships, it's exactly the same. So when the chemistry is so intense, beware, because that will very often make people feel like they've found the perfect relationship. We're on the same page. He or she really gets me. We're having so much fun. The sexual relationship is so amazing. Careful. Take your time, because you will ignore the other 3 C's. And before you know it, that chemistry is going to fizzle out like a firework in the rain. And when it comes to, I talk about chemistry in business, there's a thing of excitement. I really like what I'm seeing here in this company. I like the energy of it all. That's how it translates into the business world. The next C is compatibility. Now, compatibility is about values. The classic example I use here when it comes to values, you've got to know what your values are, first of all, before you can identify them in someone else. So I have a process for helping people to very quickly identify their own values and for identifying the values in somebody else. Because they're very specific things that people say and do and express in their lifestyle that will tell you about their values. When it comes to a company, it's about the company's mission statement. If you are really into the environment, it's very unlikely that you're going to want to be tied up with a chemical company. It's not about me expressing my own values and beliefs here, but I'm just giving the example. Yeah. In a relationship, if you're into wheatgrass, which is a substance that you can extract that is very, very beneficial in terms of health, and your partner's into cocaine, you clearly have different values. Sure. You can have the same values, but in a different hierarchy. Yeah. You can also have the same values with different rules for the value. Let's take love as a value. What makes you feel loved could be very different to what makes me feel loved. I'm going to recommend another book here about love languages. Dr. Gary Chapman wrote the book. Yeah. It's called The 5 Love Languages. It's identifying your rule for love. He gives 5. One is quality time. The other one is, he calls it physical touch. I call it affection. Acts of service, which is doing things, buying gifts, and affirmation. So of those 5, there would generally be 2 that are quite close together. For me, I'm a quality time and an affection person. My partner is affection and then quality time. So it's easy for us to identify one another's love languages. I have friends where his love language is affirmation and then quality time. Hers is doing things and then buying gifts. So unless you know this, you're going to be missing one another in your love languages. So those are rules attached to a value. It gets a little bit more complicated, but when you know it, it's easy.
Sure.
Let's go to the third C, connection. Kevin, this is why relationships break down. They don't break down because of the next C, which is communication. Connection means I feel safe with you. Connection means I trust you. Connection means there's a sense of belonging and exclusivity to this relationship. Unless, of course, you're polyamorous. Some people are. There's no judgment here, but, there's a sense of belonging. And lastly, you've got my back and I've got your back. The same is true for a company. You've got to feel safe in your work environment. There's got to be a sense of trust, a sense of belonging, teamwork, and that members have one another's backs. As I mentioned, the last one, communication. I work all over the world. So if I'm working in Belgium, someone who is French speaking, I'm going to moderate my tone and my pace and make sure that my client is understanding me and I've really got my client. Communication is something we learn. It's a skill, it's an art that is practiced. The better we are at listening, the easier communication becomes. I remember someone else I admire tremendously is Jamie Smart. Jamie has written a number of books and he's a brilliant teacher. I remember being in a little workshop with Jamie and him saying that if you really want to become a great listener, put your tongue behind your front two teeth, close your mouth, and your brain just goes into neutral. Because when someone's talking to us, very often that tongue is getting ready to interrupt them. Right. Men especially are very sensitive to interruption because they really need to feel heard. So do women. But if you want to become a better listener, so it's a trick I teach all of my clients and I use it all the time. It's unconscious with me. Now my tongue just goes behind my two front teeth. My mouth is closed and I'm listening and really making sure I'm taking in so that at times I can say, let me see if I've got you. And then I will repeat back what I've heard using my client's languaging or my partner's languaging or my child's languaging or my friend's languaging to see that I've really got them. Because when somebody really feels heard, they feel safe, they can trust you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's funny because as you were talking, I just worked out where my tongue was and it's there automatically as well. But I never knew that.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So, are they in an order specifically? These four, the four C's.
Well, I would put them in that order because chemistry is the one element that derails relationships.
Right.
And people feel the chemistry or they don't feel the chemistry. Now, I'm going to just address this specifically to women. For men, it's different. If he's on a date with someone and he doesn't feel that chemistry, it's unlikely he's going to go on a second date. Ladies, please hear me here. Because if you don't feel that instant chemistry on a date, but you're having a good time, you're chatting easily, he's a really nice person, you don't find him like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, that you never want to see him again. It just flows really nicely and you're enjoying yourself. Please go on a second date and a third and a fourth, because it's very often that something just shifts. And it's like, wow, now I'm really interested. And it could be something he does, something he says, in the way he moves, or you find out something about his life that becomes really attractive. Kevin, I've seen this time and time again in coaching women. And it's happened to myself in my own life, where initially I thought, I'm not feeling this. And on the second date, sort of thought, no, I'm not going on another date. But kept in connection and met up another time. And it was on that third meeting that something shifted for me. It was like, wow, I really like this. And I became very curious. And I was much more interested. And if I hadn't, I would have given up the best relationship of my life. So even coaches can kind of get it wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm glad I applied what I teach. And so many women have said to me, wow, I'm so glad I listened to that advice, because it was fun. And even though I initially thought he was too short for me, or he had too many tattoos, or it's such a great relationship. And one of my clients, I remember saying this, she said this to me, and 6 months later, she said, I'm so in love. Where initially it was nice and she was going along with it, and then it really grabbed her. Very often there are unconscious fears and beliefs that are affecting us.
Well, so therefore that decision is a rash emotional decision then, from something else, ego, or something like that then?
I'm not sure if I'm getting you there. The decision to...
So the decision to cut things off, I think, no, I'm not really feeling it, is something from somewhere else. Could you talk on that a bit? Or?
Yes, it would be coming from an emotional perspective, really, of I'm not feeling it. So the feeling is the emotion. Where rationally we're having fun, it's really going nicely, conversation is interesting, he's definitely not boring, and he probably ticks boxes, except for the chemistry. It's just not quite there, because perhaps they have felt in the past intense chemistry for somebody and such a connection because of the chemistry, but it ended up being a really bad relationship because there wasn't compatibility, there wasn't connection, and the communication wasn't easy. And now they're looking for the intense chemistry with someone who's smart, who is easygoing, who's fun to be with, who's successful, but there's not that intense chemistry.
I see, yeah.
Relationships will hit a set point. Even relationships that end up, starting with great chemistry and then end up at that set point where you're dealing with the challenges and the obstacles and daily life. Who's doing the grocery shopping, we're entertaining tonight, who's going to help with what, and how are we going to get it all together, and there's your job and there's my job, and then the dog's sick. And there's that set point that every relationship comes to, whether you're in Hollywood or you're in some little council estate dealing with life. Nobody is immune to it. And when we've got to that set point where that chemistry has dissipated, here's something to watch. Dr. Helen Fisher on YouTube speaks about the chemistry, that if it wasn't for the chemistry, we would not fall in love. By about 9 months, between 9 and 18 months, that chemistry starts to dissipate, where you are dealing with the ho-humness of being in a relationship and life. And there will still be great times, exciting times, and holidays and whatever, but you've reached the set point. And the phenylethylamine has worn off. There is still an oxytocin effect, but it comes with the challenge of daily life. And that's when most relationships go into what we call a power struggle. So intense chemistry or good chemistry is going to come to a set point. I know I would love to have great chemistry, but I also know that if I don't look after myself and look after my relationship, it's going to end up in the same space where couples need to make a decision. we're either going to do the work and do this consciously, or we're going to end up going our different ways.
Sure. Yeah. So when you talk about when you hit that set point then, and you go into the sort of the as you call it, the ho-humness of the daily life, the chores, you've got some sort of a routine going, etc. How do you keep that the spark? How do you keep the chemistry going? Because it's funny, I was speaking to a client, and he was saying that my wife and I, they're very much in love, but they don't really have that excitement for each other, and they can go sort of months without without having sex or things like that, and it just kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to him for a while, so I'm not sure what's gone on, but I don't know, they felt like they were stuck, like you say, that they were just stuck in this kind of this habit. But then on his side of things, there's and hers, from what he was saying, there's some insecurities that would creep in because, am I not attracted, or am I not attracted to him anymore, or that type of thing. How do you kind of, you have how do you keep the desire there? I suppose is what I'm asking.
Relationships come to the set point, and very often with a lot of unconscious stuff, the 90% stuff of the past, where couples are not really addressing issues, and they're not skilled in connection, and a lot of stuff is going under the carpet. So we call them little landmines, they get into a pattern of survival. Hedy Schleifer calls it a survival knot. And what happens when we have these little landmines and the sense of survival in our relationships is we've started to disconnect. There will be no-go zones. As in, if I go here, she's going to react like that. So I'm not going to upset the apple cart here. I was going to keep quiet about it. But if I say this to him, he's going to be triggered, and we're going to have the same situation, so I'm not going to say anything. Or perhaps we do, and then when it's explosive, and then it doesn't feel safe to go there. And that's a couple's survival knot. And that detracts from intimacy and from connection. The other thing that can happen, and it's something that I need to pay attention to in my life, is that life gets very busy, really, really busy. So I took note when my partner said to me, do I need to schedule time in your diary? You see, couples need to make time, as we do, for eating, for exercise, for seeing family and friends. We need to make time for loving and for connection, just for the two of us. And it's very important that we show up regularly, making time for connection, for loving, just as one does for exercise and for. You see, for a couple, there's a space between them that we call the relational space. And if we have no-go areas and zones of conflict that we avoid, if the energy of the relationship is of resentment and defensiveness and blame and just shutting down to one another, it contaminates what we call the relational space. So you can imagine you and I sitting here and we have a relational space, because in any relationship, there's a relational space. But if it is a negative-based relationship, it becomes toxic. And then we need to find a new way of connecting so we can build connection and intimacy, which then leads to physical connection, to great lovemaking, and to the chemistry being there.
Sure.
Not seeing your partner as the enemy, but seeing them as the one who truly has your back, that you can depend on, where you feel safe.
Sure. I love that. Wow, there's Shelley, there's an as I expected, an onslaught of masses and masses of value. So thank you very much for that. What are some of the
recorded?
yes, I know. Same here. What is for couples that are maybe hitting that set point then, or actually there's a couple of things. Okay, let's go with couples that are hitting that set point, and the other one would be dating as well, because I want to get into the dating how you discover the new partner. So maybe let's touch on that one first. Let's go and touch on the if you're out there and you're looking for a new a date or a new life partner, what are the things you need to be mindful of? Because we've had conversations before, and I found it fascinating that how you kind of went about finding your new partner, and if you wouldn't mind sort of sharing that, I thought it was really interesting.
Okay, so it's no different. I was sitting with a client last night who came to see me with a very broken heart a couple of months ago, and she was on the edge. And as I helped her transcend that and get clear on what was real to her, we worked with her list of what's really, really important for her to have in a partner. Now, for men, there's got to be attraction. There's got to be some kind of physical attraction. And we want to be attracted to our partner, but it's not about having a list of, tall, dark, handsome, or that she's, sexy and vibrant. The list has to do, as I said earlier on, with your highest values. If you don't know yourself, you don't know what you want. The key here is, what is this relationship you have with yourself? Do you really know who you are, where you're going, and what you want? If you don't, contact me. I'll help you. I'm going to list out my list of values of what I was looking for in a partner. Now, I am so involved in this personal development world, and I do believe I work at relationships consciously. I have grown tremendously. When I think back to my first marriage, I didn't know anything. My second marriage, I knew a bit more. I had a relationship in between that where I look back at my behavior and I cringe sometimes because I would do it so differently now. If I just want the table. And when I was very consciously looking for a new partner, I knew I wanted somebody who had embraced the world of personal development, who'd worked with a therapist and was open to working on a relationship. Kevin, you and I have spent time together, and I can talk about relationships forever and ever and ever, except when I'm out with my girlfriends. I want to have a glass of wine, and I don't care whose relationship is ending. That's my night off.
Yeah.
That was my number one requirement, that my partner was into the world of relationships, had worked on himself, and was open to working on our relationship. Number two, I wanted somebody who was physically and emotionally available. If any of my clients are watching this, you will know that I put this at the top of the list. Physically available means he or she is no longer attached to a past partner. If they've been divorced for about 2 years. 2.5 years, because it takes time to work through the ending of that relationship. Emotionally available means they're showing up with an open heart. They're not afraid to be authentic. And to be emotionally open means you are open to hearing about somebody's emotional world, what their needs are. So the third requirement for me, based on my values, is that somebody is kind and generous. I am kind and generous. Yeah, there's shadow parts of me. But I'm predominantly kind and generous. I cannot be with a partner who is not kind and generous. That means kind to my children. If you know me, you know I have a dog. And I very often have another little dog who stays here because she's a constant visitor. I love her. I love dogs. You can't be my partner and not love dogs. If you don't like dogs, you're not going to fit into my life. It's a value. I value my health. I love healthy eating, great food. I can't live on a fast food diet, and I don't want to cook like that. It's just not my choice. I love to exercise. So if you can race up Parliament Hill with me, we can do it. That's great. I need somebody who's into walking, into hiking, into outdoors. Simple things in life, but it's active.
Sure.
And then financial stability is very important to me. And I like to keep that firm foundation. So I don't spend more than I earn. I like to save. I like to feel secure. And, if it's not important to you, we're going to have different values there. We may have different ways of expressing it in the hierarchy. One might save more, and the other one might book theatre tickets and movie tickets more so we can have fun. But fun is also a value in a relationship. And somebody who values that as much as their financial stability is very important to me. One of us is going to take care of fun, and the other one's also going to take care of that base where we can work together.
Sure.
That pretty much covers my highest values, except the one where I need a lot of support, because making a difference is very close to the top of my list of values. So I would say that it would be my relationship is my highest value, making a difference, my health, and then my financial stability. And along with my relationship are my family relationships.
Sure.
So I'll always put relationships first. It's just, that's how it is for me.
Yes, yeah.
And sometimes we need to compromise on our highest values in order to meet a need or to accomplish something. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
That's how I went about looking for my partner. So on a date, I would say, right, has he done personal development work? Oh, yeah, he says he's really into psychology. Date a bit longer. It's like, no, I don't think this is a good match. Or it might be that he kind of ticks the boxes, but there's one C that's missing, because that list of values then ties up with the 4 C's. And I remember having a relationship. There was chemistry. We were very compatible. Communication was amazing, but connection was missing. Right. And that's it. It's never going to work. Another partner that I dated was, very skilled in the world of NLP and business, paid attention to detail. It was phenomenal, great communicator. But emotionally was very closed, really, really closed. I picked up there was a lot of stuff in the background that he just didn't want to open up about, which then disturbs the connection. Because can I trust you? Do I feel safe with you? Not really sure here. And then I started to see a couple of months in, our values were different. I just knew it was never going to work. Sure. So I ended that relationship. We're friends. You can be friends with people who have similar values. They don't have to have exactly the same values, although my closest friends have exactly the same values as I do. And then it was kind of like getting really serious about, because I wanted a partner in my life. I didn't deviate from my list. But I didn't put chemistry at the top of my list. I knew chemistry had to be there. But unless all those boxes were ticked, only then did I worry about chemistry.
Sure.
Because I don't let anybody into my intimate space unless I can see there's a tick, tick, yes. Okay. Are you socially adaptable? Or do I have to babysit you in a social arrangement? Because if you can fit into the social life, because I have a very big social life and a lot of engagements, I need a partner who fits into that. If I've got to babysit you at a social engagement, we're never going to work. You need to be able to get out there and network as well. And then we find out about the chemistry. So that was the last box for me that needed ticking. And there's a lot of chemistry in a kiss.
Sure.
You kind of determine, oh, I like that. Here's something interesting about chemistry. A partner's smell. If you like that pheromone kind of smell thing, that's a really good sign. In coaching couples and individuals whose relationships have ended, I have so often found, and this has been my past experience as well, that when one is not really attracted to one's partner anymore because of issues or whatever has happened, you don't really like their smell.
Yeah, it's true, actually. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I wish I'd actually done more research on this. When I have more time, I'm going to.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they do smell different. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, wow.
So if you like the smell of the person you're with in that first encounter of a kiss, that's a really good sign.
Interesting. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. So going back to the couples then, when they're in that the set point, what was the question I wanted to ask? What are some of the easy kind of takeaways that they could, if you were to speak to a couple now and they were stuck in a set point, what would be something they could sort of implement straight away? I suppose it would be to focus around the connection. Would that be right?
Okay, so can I go back to rule number 1?
Yes.
Okay, you and I discussed rule number 1, I think. And this is rule number 1 in my practice. If you want to change your relationship and you want to have a better life across the board, stop being defensive. 3 words. Stop being defensive.
True, yeah.
And then find someone who can help you to work consciously on your relationship, to build connection. I'll recommend another book, another great relationship book for couples. Has been written by Dr. Sue Johnson. And it's called Hold Me Tight. She does the emotionally focused therapy. So the 3 therapists I really admire. The first one I've mentioned is Heidi Schleifer. Sue Johnson has a lot of YouTube videos as well. She has a great success rate in her practice in helping couples. That book is available on audio as well for people who find it difficult to read. You know, I listened to that book in my car when I was traveling. I didn't have time to read it. And then the other therapist I just love, and she has a couple of TED Talks as well, is Esther Perel. She talks about infidelity in relationships, why it happens, how we can keep relationships on track. There is so much material, information out there. There's a lot of help available out there as well. If people need any information, they're very welcome to email me. I'll get back to them. I'll put them in contact. You know, I have a very busy practice. If I can fit them in, I'm really happy to. And otherwise, I have people I can refer to who can really help them, who are brilliant, who've done the same training I've done.
Excellent. Yeah. I was going to say, you know, you're not mentioning yourself, but you did right at the end then. So, I mean, if people wanted to consume some more of your content specifically, where can they get hold of you?
They can get hold of me through my website, which is shelleywhitehead.com, and it's SHELLEY. And I will get back to you. Otherwise, my phone number is readily available. Send me a WhatsApp message or a text message. I'm generally pretty good at responding. Yeah, you can set up an appointment.
Excellent. And you have a Facebook page and everything as well, don't you?
Yeah, follow me on Facebook. I also have a group for anybody who's really battling with a broken heart. It's the 5 steps to heal your broken heart. There's a product that's going to be released soon using those 5 steps to help heal your broken heart. But it is, you know, these are tools that I use. I call them formulas. They're formulas that work. You know, I'm known for helping heal broken hearts and helping people to reconnect to a life they really love again. because I understand when clients sit in front of me and they say, I don't think I'm ever going to be happy again. And I also understand why people jump in front of trains and say, I've got you, I hear you. And I promise you, you're going to be okay and you will be happy again. I've got your back and I'm with you. We're going to work through this. So there's that page. There's, of course, I don't think I've got a couple of spaces left on my one page, but there is a coach page as well.
Great. I mean, we'll add all this to the notes anyway in the video. But Shalel, just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you very much for your time. I mean, I've not known you that long, but I feel like I've known you a very long time, and I can just the energy you give and the you're so open-hearted, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. I just wanted to thank you very much for giving huge value to my audience, to me, and to obviously to the people that you serve. So. Yes, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, good luck to everybody out there wanting better relationships. It's possible.
It's great. Thank you. Let me just